He is Barry Sachs, and not the Barry Sachs who was the defensive line coach with the Montana Grizzlies. Just in case anybody was wondering, no, this is a man who is a sports media executive, a lifer in the business, many years with ESPN. He is currently an adjunct professor at Quinnipiac and also working with the Connecticut Sun. Barry is with us on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley, a national anchor at Fox Sports Radio. This is a chance for Barry to shine light on his career and point out specifically what makes him inspirational as a way to inspire others. And I think it's pretty easy to find places and parts of your career where that happens, Barry. So as I start here and I welcome you in, as someone who over the course of your career, I can't even imagine how many tapes you've looked at, resume reel tapes. If you were to put together a resume tape of your career, and like you said, 5 minutes max,
right?
What am I going to see on your resume tape?
You're going to see passion. That really is probably the number one thing. Sometimes to a fault, I gather, although I tried to work on that over the years. I'm a passionate guy. I'm 100% all in everything we're doing. So, you know, a nightly show, a game, whatever it is, I'm 100% passionate in. And that energy, that passion comes out, you know, that would probably be the number one thing you would see on the reel. A guy who loves sports, passionate about it, and always trying to do what he believes was the right thing for that show that day and for our viewers. So one of my favorite phrases is no rules. It's not like anyone should ever say, hey, that's not the way we do it here. Any given day, anything could be the right thing to do if you have a reason for it. Why are we doing our highlight in black and white tonight? If you have an explanation for it and it sounds right, let's give it a shot.
What is the most outside the box? And maybe there's not just one, but there's a collection of ideas where you put together and you were thinking about ways in which to break away from the norm when it comes to a show, when it comes to a broadcast, where you tried something new and it hit pretty well.
You know, a lot of what we started over on ESPN News kind of worked that way. I kind of feel like we did shows and we were into social media really before social media ever hit. We used to do a show called The Pulse. Mark Carman, who was recently left the Big Ten Network, but you know was the lead producer of that show. And we were doing texts and tweets and fonts and graphics and really before social media ever hit. We talked betting, at least to ourselves, before betting ever began. I was one of the big proponents of betting at ESPN, getting it on the air, and got shot down forever. And, you know, now to see lines on game day and, you know, talking over unders, it's, you know, having a show daily wager, you know, unbelievable. So things along that name, we were ahead of the curve on a lot of those things. NHL tonight, NBA tonight, RPM tonight, daily shows of sports. Now there's networks for those sports. You know, ESPN was awesome. It was a great career. I spent 33 years there, worked with some of the most unbelievable people in the industry. It was just a collection of people who loved what they were doing. We talked about passion before. People rivaled my passion. The people I worked with had a similar passion. Everybody was sports fanatical, trying to put forth the best effort we could on a daily basis. And I truly believe that's what made ESPN as successful as it's been.
How has that passion showed itself, especially early in your career, Barry, at ESPN, where you go from an entry-level production assistant to a producer in 5 years?
Yeah.
Normally it takes twice as long to do that. And I know there are other positions now, but the fact is you took the fast track. Obviously, passion played a big part in it, but how were you able to go that far along in such a short span of time?
Well, in all honesty, it was a different time. And I don't know, someone coming in the door today with equal or even more passion if that's possible. I don't think you can make that run in 5 years. You know, it's a 10-year journey at least. You know, we were lucky. ESPN2 was starting. People were getting promoted because there was just more things happening. Again, like you said, there weren't high soup positions back then in the beginning, and feature producers and documentary producers. There's a lot more levels now to make more money and get promoted than there were then. So I was fortunate. It was a good time. We're talking the early 80s. You know, ESPN was exploding quickly. And again, it was, you know, you were there and there's more positions and let's go. And I actually got promoted a lot faster than I really wanted to. In 1987, I was an AP and I was scheduled to be the font coordinator for the first season of NFL, which, wow, I was really excited, and it was really something I wanted to do. Fonting was great. I loved it. It was like a video game before video games were popular. And, you know, to put the right graphic in at the right time, it just working with an operator next to you, it was a great thing. And I really was excited to do it. And I got called into an office one day and it was like, hey, Barry, listen, you know, back then ESPN was kind of remote and Sports Center. And I was remote and I was going to go do the NFL. And there was a friction between the two sides. You know, the Sports Center side was in the studio working nights and all the time, and the remote guys are on the road covering games. And there was definitely friction between the two. And I got called in and it was like, hey, Barry, look, we want to promote you to producer in Sports Center. We want you to come in and kind of help bridge that gap between the two sides. And I was like, hey, I'm all for it. But listen, I'm about to go font the first season of NFL and I really want to do that. Can I go font the season of NFL and then I'll take the promotion in January after the season's over? And like everything else in the business, no, the position's open now. You know, if you don't take it now, there's no knowing what it's going to be like in February or whatever. I was engaged. I was going to get married. Figured, all right, getting off the road, make a little bit more money. So I took the promotion, and I don't regret it. It was the continuation of the career, but I really did want to font that first season of NFL, and I do regret that I didn't get the opportunity to do that.
Barry Sachs is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. So you didn't get a chance to do that, but you did get an elevated position. What is it like, and how have you been able to be so good at, like you talked about, conflict management, where in the course of putting on a broadcast or a production or working with different sides, what is it about your temperament that over the course of your career where you've sort of been that calming both sides down, let's work together, let's mesh, let's vibe, and let's put on a good show?
You know, it's a combination of a lot of things, and I don't know that I'm as good at that as what you say it is. You know, I've been loud. You know, I've been crazy. Things happen. You know, I was involved in the earthquake in San Francisco at the World Series. So, you know, are you calm all the time and dealing with it? No, but I've always kind of lived by another saying of, like, do the right thing. You know, what's the right thing to do? And if you kind of take that track and think about it and lay it out, it kind of makes things a little bit easier. So we're not scrambling. What do we think is right? We know what we're doing. I have really talented people all around me. All right, let's decide as a group what we think is the right path to go, and let's go tackle it. And again, I really think a lot of that, it was kind of the whole origin of ESPN. We were a bunch of young sports fanatics who got this opportunity to work at this place. But really our whole goal on a daily basis was, what do we want to put on the air for our friends who are sitting at home watching, who aren't as fortunate enough to have this job? What's important? What do they need to know? What do we need to show them? And that was kind of the track we took. And if we stayed on that track, we were true to ourselves, sports fans doing a show for sports fans. I always tell people, Chris Berman and Tom Jackson doing primetime, if it wasn't in a studio, if the two of them were sitting at a bar, they would have the same exact conversation they're having on air that they had in the bar. And I think fans appreciated that. You know, sports fans talking to sports fans, real things you need to know, highlights you need to see, information you needed to know. And that was the track we took. And I think it was the right way to go, and it certainly worked.
So what were the conversations like behind the scenes when that earthquake hit in San Francisco and you were part of that production?
It was crazy. And it changed a lot of things in my thought process. You know, I won't say it was great because people died that day. And, you know, I'm certainly in tune with that. But I learned so much. You know, I do not go into an event now without thinking, what happens if there's an earthquake today? What happens if there's a power outage? You know, I talk to my students and a lot of things about even getting laid off at ESPN. I wasn't totally prepared for that. I should have been, especially after the earthquake, because I tell people now, the earthquake kind of got me thinking you always need to have a plan B, okay? Even when things are good, you know, going down the road, have a plan B. What happens if an earthquake hits right now? What happens if a lightning strike hits right now? You know, I remember, I think it was Fox at the Super Bowl many years ago when the power outage went out, or maybe it was NBC. I don't remember. I don't know that they were 100% prepared for it, and they scrambled. So after the earthquake, at least from a television vision point of view, like now Connecticut Sun games, I am thinking before we go on the air, if something drastic happens right now, what are we doing? But it was a great experience of everybody coming together. The earthquake I'm talking about now. You know, we had just finished doing pregame Sports Center, and the game was getting ready to begin. Al Michaels was, you know, in the pregame. We're in the truck, you know, hey, I think we're having an earthquake. Power went out, you know, Al's power went out. Our power didn't, which was really the remarkable thing about the whole thing. My ops producer didn't do as good a job as he should have. And everybody else at the World Series is behind home plate. But because we were late getting to the show, which I don't understand how, we were the only people in center field. So everybody else lost power. We didn't lose power. So we stayed up. So when the earthquake hit and power went out, I'm still in communication with Bristol. And hey, we still have power. Let me get some things organized here and then we could go back on the air. And then it's just, you know, things kick in. One of the most amazing, the first person back to the truck. Now again, so people were in the building. We were doing a pregame show. Joe Torre was working for us at the time as an analyst. He was the first person back at the truck. Barry, what can I do? Joe, there's a camera, there's a producer, go inside, get whatever sound you can. And really it was just reacting. So, you know, there's one camera going out and then, you know, stuff started coming in. So, all right, what do we got? Then, you know, because we didn't lose power, we had in front of us the monitors of KABC. We were an ABC affiliate. So in LA, or, you know, I'm seeing the feed coming in from KABC and you're seeing fires. We saw the bridge collapse. So you're just reacting. I was also really, really fortunate to have a guy like Bob Lee on the crew there who you could throw anything at any time. And there is nobody better than dealing in a situation with that than a Bob Lee. So everyone did stay relatively calm. People just started doing their job and we're on the air. Tapes are coming in. Hey, I got a really good interview with Tony La Russa. Okay, cue it up. Hey, Bob, what's going on in that monitor there? Because we were the only people in center field, when the police and the safety people started to come, that was where they situated themselves. So now, you know, Bob Lee's grabbing a policeman. Hey, look at that monitor. What do you see? What's going on out there? He's talking to the safety crews. And it just continued as more stuff went on. You know, are we playing baseball tonight? No way. You know, so is the commissioner going to talk? Players started coming out of the building, so we're getting sound. And it's just continuing to do what you do, try and tell the best story you can as what's going on, as you know, without knowing what's the next piece of material you're going to get.
The second you signed off that night,
Yeah.
what came to mind?
Calling home and making sure they knew I was okay. Again, we had people walk behind Bob Lee on camera so people could see that their sons and daughters were safe. We did that a few times during the telecast. But, you talk about afterwards, so we drove back to the hotel. We got a police escort back to the hotel. Crazy. There are fires. There's no power. It's dark. Everything's crazy. We get back to the hotel and everyone really is congregated in the lobby. And again, we're talking now 1987. No cell phones, and people still had the cellophane on the antennas trying to get radio reception, and candles were lighting up everything. I was on the 8th floor and I really wanted to go to my room. So I did walk up the room. I don't remember how I got in the room because there was no power, but I got in there. I guess I had a regular key. It wasn't a card punch. And I remember just looking, sitting in my room, looking out over the city, and everything's black. There's fires going on everywhere. And every 30 seconds, the hotel would shake, from an aftershock. And I'm sitting there thinking, at any time, this building could just fall right over. And I'm like, should I be here? But where are you going? So you go out in the street, any building could fall at any time. So I stayed in my room. I drank a few things. I smoked a few things, to be honest with you. And just kind of looked out and dealt. And then the next day, again, we worked. We covered the story. Chris Berman, Chris Myers. Again, are we playing baseball? When is the World Series going to resume? Can we go to Oakland and play? What's the structure of Candlestick Park like? I mean, we did a really good job on the Sports Center covering the story of the earthquake at the World Series. But one of the hardest things I remember, we were there for a couple of days. They decided they were going to postpone the World Series for a while. It did resume again in Oakland. But I remember coming home and telling my wife, hey, I'm going to have to go back. She's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, the World Series is going to resume at some point in time. I'm going to go back and do my job. You can't go back. And of course I'm going to go back. But like I said, it was a tremendous experience to live through. I'm thankful that we did live through it because a lot of people didn't. But I did learn a lot of lessons from it, and it prepared me a lot for future things and having a plan B. Although I didn't have one when I got laid off, and I wish I would have.
You said it in a way helped prepare you, and it introduced you to handling situations in a broadcast that you might never have had to deal with before.
Yep.
What do you think the trajectory of your career would have been like? The way in which you would have handled putting on broadcast, the way in which you would have gone about setting up productions if that earthquake and that ordeal had not happened and you had not been there?
Well, I don't know. Again, it did change me, and there were a lot of things, that I learned from that. But the biggest change for me in a producer or in production really came at ESPN when John Walsh came to the company. We were pretty much a highlight machine until John got there. We would get on the air, we'd put on highlights. Here's 10 NBA highlights. Here's 10 baseball highlights. Take a break. Here's 5 more hockey highlights, whatever, take a break. We were a highlight machine. John turned us into a news organization. When we used to come to work before John Walsh, myself, director, talent would sit at their desk, talk about the show. What do we want to do? What do we got? Boom, boom, boom. When John Walsh came in, I want you all, everybody, PAs, APs, talent, in the conference room, sitting around a table, discussing ideas, discussing thoughts, knowing what your resources were. So again, he turned us and me, at least thinking wise, from a highlight machine to a news organization, to a news thinking person, what's important, what are the news stories? Again, if you remember, Sports Center back in the early day, like I said, was here's 10 NBA highlights. He turned Sports Center into kind of the newspaper format. I don't need 10 NBA highlights. Let's that A block of the show, let's make it the best of everything. Give me the best NBA, the best NHL, the best baseball, not here's 10 basketball games that really only 2 of them had major significance on the day. So his influence, his push was really probably the biggest thing for me, changing the thought process of what a show should be, what a show should look like, what a layout of a show should be, and really turned me more into a news person than just somebody who could slap some highlights on the air.
When it comes to a thought process, today specifically has a lot of resonance with you, given that there's a lot of reminiscing that is going on. When you think about
six years today, today is the 6th anniversary of the day I was given the Ziggy, as my good friend Dick Vitale would say.
When you are in a day like today, where your mind must be flooding back to those memories, all the events, the people who you got to work with, the achievements and everything, those relationships, what do you miss the most?
I miss the people, the relationships. I miss the energy of the control room. Again, walking into the control room to do a show, I don't wear a watch, because whatever time it is, the only time that ever really mattered was the clock in the control room in front of you. Again, if it said 11 o'clock, we're on the air. If my watch says 10:50, it doesn't matter. That's the clock that matters. And, I tell my students all the time now too, because, hey, is it okay to be nervous? I still get nervous at Connecticut Sun games when we're counting down to air. It's okay to be nervous, but don't let the nervousness become a distraction. Turn that nervousness into positive energy, enthusiasm, and passion. Okay? If you are prepared, then there should be no issues. Preparation's the most important thing. Be prepared. And if you're prepared, then everything will work out. You're ready for any situation that could come. So be prepared. So I miss the energy of the control room, but the relationship, walking down the hall and seeing Chris Berman and just having a conversation about the San Francisco Giants, walking down the hall and seeing Scott Van Pelt and, boy, your Maryland Terps didn't look too good this week, or whatever it was. And all those producers, PAs, APs. I mean, you look at some of the people I've worked with. I mean, it's a who's who in the industry. I started as a production assistant with Fred Godelli.
Wow.
Who is now the producer of Sunday Night Football. Drew Esikoff, the director of Monday Night Football. When I took the promotion into SportsCenter, Scott Ackerson was really the person who took me under his wing and kind of taught me the beginnings about how to be a producer. I've watched a couple of your interviews recently, the
Scott came on. Yeah,
What's
Scott
that?
came on too.
Yeah, no doubt. Billy Friedman you had on last week.
Yes.
I did a lot of work with Billy. Just, great people who cared about what was going on. Just those conversations. I'm a New Yorker, Yankees, Knicks, Rangers, Giants, many battles, fun with our Red Sox fan friends. It used to be a lot better when the Red Sox never won anything. It used to be a lot better needle on our side. Now, they're winning world titles and the Yankees haven't been to the World Series in a decade. We keep our mouths shut. But those rivalries and conversations, and there were people from everywhere, Big game James Williams was a Baltimore Ravens fan. So, if the Ravens were playing, there was a reason to go there. You had friends from Philly who were Phillies fans and Eagle fans. So every day there was something, rivalry, ribbing each other, having fun. And it was a great place, a great culture. And that is kind of the relationships, the friendships, the love. Again, as people had talked to you on these nights, holidays, weekends, that's real. I spent more Thanksgivings with those people than my family. That is my family, New Year's Eve, now it's college bowl games, right? Christmas Day is an NBA day. You're spending holidays at work. We worked in Bristol, Connecticut. I did the 2:30 a.m. SportsCenter show live for 11 years. Okay. Now they do that show in LA, but it used to be done in Bristol, 2:30 a.m. live. We would get out of work. You still want to have a beer or socialize a little. You just put in a 15-hour day. We're going to someone's apartment or whatever, ourselves socializing together. There's no bar open in Bristol at 3 a.m. in the morning, I can tell you that. So, we're always socializing together, spending holidays together. So those bonds, those friendships and things like that's kind of what I miss the most.
Barry Sachs is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. Barry, all I hear from you is that you radiate positivity. And in a business where people can get jaded, people can get cynical, where the business can really wear down on people. And part of that can be because it takes a lot of time away from your family. Like you said, you work a lot of holidays.
Yep.
Why have you not chosen that route? Why have you always sided with positivity to this day?
It's sports. Sports is I watched the Knicks game last night. The Garden was electric. Knicks and Celtics, double overtime. It was electric. The building was crazy. Mike Tyson didn't fight a heavyweight championship fight except the one he lost overseas that I wasn't in attendance for. I've been to 14 Final Fours. I've been to Daytona 500s, Indy 500s. And working with great people. So, there's no reason not to be positive. It's just, again, it's a great job. It has its drawbacks and it has its sacrifices. Bill Fitz was my boss when I first started at ESPN. And one of the first things I remember, he called me into his office when I got hired. And he was like, Barry, I just want you to know. Now, again, things have changed a little bit since the early 80s, but not drastically. Barry, I just want you to know, there are going to be weddings and birthdays and things that you miss because of work. And that was real, and I try and teach that to my students. If you work college football all year, you're a PA, you're an AP on college football, and you work all year, you do want to work the national championship, right? Well, the semifinals are on New Year's Eve. You do want to work that day. If you work on the NBA, you do want to work Christmas Day when there are 5 NBA games on your network. So you're not going to be home for Christmas. And telling your mother you're not going to be home for Thanksgiving. I spent many Thanksgivings at Texas A&M football games back when that rivalry was going on. So that's real. And, not being home for holidays. And Bill said, Barry, this is real. You're going to miss weddings. You're going to miss holidays. You're going to miss birthdays. And if that's something you have a problem with, you may want to reconsider. And I teach that to my students. Know now that this is real. I've had PAs, prospective PAs say to me, I don't want to work weekends. You don't want to work weekends. You don't want to work NFL Sunday? Don't work in this business. You don't want to work college football Saturday? Don't work in this business. We did college football. We did the red zone of college football at ESPN, I think before the red zone on the NFL started. I would walk in the building at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning and walk out at 3 a.m. Sunday morning. Games start at noon. You go through the last Pac-10, Pac-12 game, whatever it is. That's a 17, 18-hour day. But it was awesome. And there's no place else you'd rather be, right? Oklahoma's playing, Alabama's playing, Texas. It's a college football Saturday. You want to be totally immersed in it. And that's everything, any sport. I'm the big hockey guy. One of the regrets I do have is, ESPN now gets hockey back. Very small but unbelievably passionate hockey group at ESPN, but a small gathering. So I'm really happy for a lot of my friends, Steve Levy and Bucci, Mark Schumann, John Lavoie, producers who waited, were PAs with me on NHL Tonight, now get an opportunity to produce. But like my favorite athlete of all time is Mark Messier.
Wow.
And ESPN just hired Mark Messier. Like I could have been working with Mark Messier. So I did reach out to a couple of people. I said, hey, listen, kind of like the first time I really regretted a lot of things was when we signed Mark Messier. I really would like to meet him for a beer after a show one day. Please make that happen. And I'm sure they will. So one of these days, hopefully we'll meet at some bar in Bristol, Connecticut, and I can have a beer with Mark Messier.
As soon as that happens, I want a full report on how that went, because I can't even imagine just your idol and being able to sit and have a conversation with him.
No doubt. But think about it, what it was like hearing they hire him and you were the hockey guy and now you're not, So
a challenging thing to stomach, but while you idolize Mark, there's so many reasons for why your students idolize you. And I want to leave you with this last question. Barry Sachs is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. What does the joy look like that you get from seeing your students get it, learn, soak it up?
Yeah, it's awesome. It really is. Now, I'm fortunate, I'm working at a university in Quinnipiac where the kids really are great and they get an opportunity in school. My students are doing play-by-play for the women's hockey team, doing social media for the volleyball team. So they're working it and they're into what I'm teaching because they want it. They want to go work at ESPN. It's cool to be able to critique their work and not just pull something generically off the internet to deal with.
Yeah.
But it's so satisfying, to see your students go out in the real world and get that job. I have students, I have about 10, 12 students working at ESPN. We've created a pretty good line there. I remember I called one of my contacts there a couple of years ago. I said, hey, listen, I have a female student. She's probably the best student I have. She could produce SportsCenter tomorrow. I know she can't walk in the door and do that, but you really need to meet her. And so she went up there, they interviewed her, she got the job. And the next day they called, said, how many more of these do you have? But, just seeing your students go out, one student is a sports reporter in Maine, one's a sports reporter in Texas, one's doing news. I got a call from one of my students. Hey, Barry, didn't you used to work in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania? Which I was a sports writer before I went to ESPN. And he's like, hey, I just got offered a job by the Fox station in Wilkes-Barre. What do you think? Things like that are awesome. And, helping your students get jobs. I get calls all the time. Hey, I got this offer from a newspaper. What do you think? I really would like the job at ESPN. What's a better way to go about it? And then even just, knowing jobs that are open, I'm sending out job listings to students and friends all the time, just to see if it's something they're interested in and to help along the way. But to see your students grow, to see them advance, get jobs, seeing them on air, it's awesome. It really is. And one of my favorite stories and how it works. So one of my former students got an internship with us at the Connecticut Sun. And she was a grad student. They fell in love with her. They offered her a full-time job after she graduated. She became my sideline reporter.
Wow.
She's their social media coordinator, marketing, whatever, but social media, doing that. So again, that's the goal of everyone. Get an internship, kill it in the internship where they want you and offer you a full-time job. Things like that make the teaching part of it so rewarding. And it's really cool seeing your kids go out, but not even just students. Again, some of the people we talked about, the David Salernos, the Billy Friedmans, the Scott Perkins. These are all people who I worked with. I'm a producer, they were PAs. They're all now CPs, running. Tim Kiley was a producer for me when I was a coordinating producer. He's now running the NBA at Turner. Scooter Vertino, probably, same thing, big, basketball and everything going on at Turner, was a PA. Many people over at the NHL network, MLB network, were PAs. They're now coordinating producers. It's prideful. It's awesome. It's humbling, but it's great. It's great to see your people. They worked hard, had a similar passion to yours. You knew they were going to be successful, and it's great to see them being successful.
They talk about football coaches having pipelines. How about that Barry Sachs pipeline? That sounds like it is a recipe for success. Barry Sachs, this has been so much fun. I could continue and talk for as long as we have time for, but I'm motivated, I'm inspired, as I know so many are. And the bottom line here is that you care. You care about others. You care about growing people and bettering people. And seeing the joy is just infectious when you see those who you've had an impact on grow. And I want people to realize that as much as you have accomplished individually, the widespread efforts that you've done to help elevate people so that they can enjoy the successes and get to their dreams. And you have been such a proponent for that. Barry, I'm Bryan Fenley. Thank you so much for doing this.
I appreciate it, Brian. Thanks. It was great.